Lily's Climate Initiative, which is a youth-led eco-feminist organization. I'm also a researcher and comms expert, and then I'm also a global advisor on a project called Walking the Talk, which focuses on feminist foreign policy, so advocating governments, particularly from the north, to increase their funding for ODA, for gender equality. So the reason why I stated these identities is because my presentation is based on my role and participation as a young climate activist, but also as a young climate researcher and communication expert in this space. So the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is climate participation and youth participation in climate governance. So this is a quote from Wangari Maathai, a Kenyan environmentalist, but also activist, political activist as well, and Nobel laureate peace winner. And this is one of my favorite quotes from her, which is, "It's the little things citizens do that will make the difference. My little thing is planting trees." And it was a bit funny that she said my little thing is planting trees when she was actually the founder of the Green Belt movement. And essentially, she realized that in Kenya there was a large mass deforestation, and she took up the initiative to start planting trees. Such a small act created such a huge movement. But not only was she just doing that, she was writing, she was a thought leader as well, and sharing the plight of Africans within the climate crisis early on, before it became popular, in quotation marks. So I think it's important for us as young people, but as citizens in Zimbabwe, to take small little actions each day. So it was great that we had that game. Natalie was giving us kind of insights on what small actions we can take each day. So the conversation will be guided by 3 questions. Firstly, what are the barriers to youth participation and climate governance in Zimbabwe, and how can they be addressed? Secondly, I'll be talking about how can young people in Zimbabwe be empowered to participate in climate governance and hold their leaders to account in for their climate action. And thirdly, what role can intergenerational collaboration play in enhancing climate governance in Zimbabwe, and how can youth be involved in this process? So I think it's important for us to kind of situate what is the landscape of Zimbabwean youth in climate action. We're doing a lot of stuff, and just recently my organization was had our first workshop with adolescent girls and young women from Harare, Bindura, and Epwe, and we wanted to ask them, how did you learn about climate change? And a lot of the common answers were from school, from social media, from the radio, from TV. So there is information about climate change being disseminated to young people. And with this information, they are concerned about the plight of their planet, but also the plight of their communities. So they're taking various initiatives. And as we're seeing with All for Climate Action and other youth groups, they're also capacitating other young people. So the actions that are being taken are tree planting, cleanups, agroecology, sustainable menstrual hygiene management through classes about how to make reusable pads, and empowering young girls to do this and then to teach others as well. So these are some of the actions that they're taking. But the problem is not that young people are not taking action. The problem is that young people are not being given the power to actually participate in the political processes and the policy processes that will enable them to take even more action on a grander scale. I think what's happening right now, not only in Zimbabwe, but across the world, is that young people are being trapped into this position or title as a youth climate activist. And now as they remain as a youth climate activist, they're just going to be seen having placards. But we need to move from having placards to having spaces for us to define what actions our countries can take. So I think that is one of the critical barriers that is happening. But I'm going to break down our barriers into 3. But before I do that, I think it's important for us to know what is climate governance. So when we look at the definition, climate governance refers to the diplomacy, mechanisms, and response measures aimed at steering social systems towards preventing mitigation and adapting to the risk posed by climate change. In the previous presentation, there was the issue of systemic issues, and I think we kind of use that in our conversations because we look at individual actions. But climate change was not caused by an individual. It was caused by systems. It was caused by the colonial project. It is caused by the extractivist model of capitalism that is pushing governments, or well, not governments, particularly in the global south, a particular development pathway which is highly extractive. So a lot of the times you will hear that we have abundance of natural resources. Yeah, we do, but it doesn't mean that we need to have gaping holes everywhere. How do we make sure that development is benefiting the environment, but is also benefiting our communities? So now when we look at climate governance, which is part of the three-tier system. So as rightly said by Marco, we have it at the international level, we have it at the regional level, and we have it at the national level. And today I'm going to be focusing on the national level. So this definition of multi-level climate governance, it's basically a continuous process of discussions and negotiations involving a diverse group of national and local governments, NGOs, civil societies. And we are meeting at different places to discuss conversations, to make decisions. And these are happening formally and informally and at different levels, right? So what are the barriers for young people to participate in climate governance? First of all, where are these conversations being held? We just had a contribution from someone who highlighted that they wanted to go to the climate change bill management consultation. No, it was the Park and Wildlife consultation, which happened at Bushman Rock. There's a lot of politics around that, the optics of it, having it at Bushman Rock, and who had the access to go. I understand that Bushman Rock is part of the conservation aspect, but come on, guys, like let's make the places where people meet to be accessible, right? And if you also look at the demographic of who's attending some of these consultative meetings, it is also private interest as well. And how many young people are able to come to Bushman Rock and who have vehicles? So the first question the first problem or barrier is physically accessing these consultations and the workshops that happen. Because a lot of the times when these forums occur, organizers will say, we want young people to come, but let's have the event in Harare. Let's have the event at Rainbow Towers, or we'll have it at Cresta Lodge. And a lot of the times you can rock up as a young person, but you will not be given money for transportation. So I'm also going to say myself, where my organization, with our call for applicants, we had specifically said for people based in Harare, but we got applications as far as Bakebridge, right? And with the people who were participating from Bindira and Airport, we had to make sure that we gave them an additional money to ensure that they can come in terms of their transport costs. So I think when government or civil society organizations are having certain forums, we need to make sure that young people have the resources to attend, but also have the resources to go back home. Another issue around physical barriers is how inclusive are these spaces? A lot of the times when these forums are being held, you will not see somebody with a sign interpreter. The sign language is one of our 16 languages in Zimbabwe. Some of the places that we will have in events are not accessible. There's not a ramp, there's not an elevator. How do we, if we're saying we're taking an intersectional approach to climate action, ensure that the places that we're having these forums are accessible for everybody to participate fully and come out in their ability to discuss and contribute to the conversations? Then the second barrier is influence. Youth participation in governance should not just be limited to workshops and consultative processes, but young people should have access and opportunities to work in government agencies such as EMA, such as the Climate Change Department, whether it is a rural district council or the city of Harare, where young people can actually be part of the process of drafting some of these bills from the inception phase, so that we can actually make sure that youth perspectives are incorporated in it. If you look at the bill at the current moment, women, youth, and people with disabilities are mentioned once, and it's in one line, and that's it. So how do we make sure that we're actually creating an inclusive climate framework if within our bill that's just one sentence bunched together, as we always do, those three groups, not realizing that they're individuals with specific needs. So are we sharing power with adults in the decision-making processes within the workspace? And then third barrier is finance. Do they have the financial resources to participate in these processes, whether they are formal or informal? And if they have their own organizations, are they able to access the finance to do their projects? Currently, when we look at the multilateral system, only 2.3% of climate finance for multilaterals is child-centered. So that doesn't even mean it's going to youth groups. Like, it's going to initiatives that are child and youth-centered out of millions or billions of dollars towards climate finance is lacking in terms of our approaches, because even the narratives that come about Africa's role in the, uh, the fight against climate change, we're constantly seen as victims and not as innovators. But we're seen that way because we are not documenting the work that is being done by young people who might be in Hondeven, who might be in another part of the country. So I think those who have the skills to document need to take that task up and actually look for people who are doing innovations. And maybe that's some of the roles that we have as young people. And I also love that you highlighted there are different levels of climate action that we have within it. Not everybody has to be a negotiator. I think sometimes that can be the challenge that emerges, that we're not quite sure what opportunities exist in this space. So we try and emulate what we see, and then it becomes oversaturated, right? So I think it's also important for us to understand what opportunities exist in this space.